Hello and welcome to a classic Cut Through the Noise episode. Over the next couple of weeks during the summer, we are working behind the scenes on bringing some new and exciting developments to Cut Through the Noise. So in the meantime, let's check in with some of our most popular episodes of Cut Through the Noise since we launched over 2.5 years ago. I hope you enjoy the series. Hi and welcome to season 9 of Cut Through the Noise. We're now in episode 4 of the season and I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Cut Through the Noise is the podcast that helps business leaders increase sales through elevated communications and marketing. I'm your host, Aisling O'Rourke, the founder of The Communications Coach, based here in the Republic of Ireland. And I work with business leaders who want to communicate with clarity and confidence. I'm very excited about today's episode of the podcast because today we're focusing on a platform that has quite literally exploded in social media terms in recent years, and that is TikTok. Now, in this season of Cut Through the Noise, I'm focusing in on how you can leverage social media as a marketing tool. And in that, of course, as I mentioned in episode 1 of the season, we really need to look at short form and micro video content. And TikTok is really the best place for that, even just to consume on TikTok and get inspiration, you know? But it is even better, of course, if you can put your face on the camera and put you and your brand out there on TikTok. Now, the video platform is based on having personality and giving a sneak peek, a behind the scenes look, whether that's your life, your hobbies, or of course, the reason we're here, your business. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a person who I've followed on TikTok for quite some time now, Lana Kearney from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Lana is the TikTok coach, and she's with us today to share her top tips on growing on TikTok as a business. I hope you enjoy our chat. So, Lana, you are very welcome to Cut Through the Noise.
Thank you very much for having me, Aisling.
So, Lana, you are joining us from Belfast, and you've created this, this business for yourself as a TikTok coach. And in this series of Cut Through the Noise, we're really delving deep into social media and how business leaders can actually be leveraging social media to get bigger engagement, to grow their business. And we know that we're now in, the final quarter of the year. Things get very, very busy. And I think for some business people, they're very nervous of TikTok. So what made you really delve into TikTok and create this niche for yourself?
So weirdly, I was on maternity leave with my second baby, and I decided to start TikTok because I was thinking about applying for other jobs, and I saw a lot of businesses asking for TikTok experience. So I was like, right, I will set up an account, I will try and master this and see if I can get to grips with it, and that will help me better apply for jobs. And then while I was on maternity leave, I realized, okay, I can master this platform easily. So I have quite a bit of background in content marketing, social media marketing. I've been doing it for like 13 years. I've always kind of specialized in growth of platforms. So Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, kind of done them all. But TikTok was kind of where I was a little bit weaker. I kind of felt like in my 30s, am I too old to be on here? But the more I used it, the more I realized it really taps into content marketing fundamentals. So all of the things that apply to the other platforms apply to it as well, but it also has some additional benefits that make growth a little bit easier. So I found that I was able to grow my account. I started offering advice to friends. They were really receptive to it. I started getting requests from people to get help with their accounts and just kind of set up a business kind of by accident, giving people advice for their platforms. And then I was doing it for people. And the more people I did it for, the more small businesses started approaching me. And then now I kind of do a mix of both. So I will help normal people who want to create content and monetize, but also businesses, and usually smaller businesses that want to be able to leverage the platform because it does present such a good opportunity. And the barriers to entry are so low for it. You don't need a huge budget. You don't need huge production. So it makes it a lot easier for those businesses that don't have a huge marketing budget to spend.
And I think that's the really important thing about it, because actually the less produced the content looks, it does tend to do an awful lot better, which means, like you say, there's a significantly lower barrier to entry, which is brilliant. But okay, we are two women doing a video podcast on the island of Ireland, and straight away there tends to be concern about putting ourselves out on a video in particular. I don't know if it's, and I know it's the same for men at times, but we tend to speak about it more with women. So, that bit can be a big stumbling block for a lot of people. I know it was for me initially when I started doing video. Like, I procrastinated about it till the nth degree.
Mhm.
What do you find helps people get over that piece initially?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest challenge that I will hear from business owners. I don't want to put myself on camera. And to be honest, the best growth on TikTok comes from speaking directly to camera, because it is a platform that is so built on connection over content. So it really does rely on that personal aspect to it. And it is a really big challenge. And I always tell people, you have to accept that you're not going to be good at this when you start. Nobody, like, it is very rare for people to be naturally good at speaking to camera, and especially in a way that works on TikTok. So a lot of what I do, in fact, I think most of what I do is teaching people how to be themselves on camera, which sounds ridiculous. Like, but when a camera is in your face and when you have that little red recording button, people tend to put on an act. They put on a presenter voice. They can't speak. They overthink their words. They freeze, and they become like caricatured versions of themselves. So it's all about learning, like, what ways to phrase things, different hooks to use that can kind of put you at ease. So, like, even doing things like not looking directly at the camera when you're recording works really well on TikTok, but it's something that you're always taught you have to look directly at the camera and make eye contact. But it's those little things that can make a real difference. But it is a real challenge. You just have to accept you're not going to be good at the start. You just have to, like, slowly get better at it with every single video you do.
I had the joy, I have to say, and the privilege of going to see Oasis. And beforehand, I heard Noel Gallagher being interviewed about how he taught himself guitar and how he spent hours upon hours upon hours of, like, teaching himself to do it back in the day. And like doing video on camera, it's like anything. And I'm sure for Noel, performing in front of his first audience was nerve wracking, although I find it really hard to imagine Noel Gallagher or Liam in any
Yeah.
way nervous about anything. But just, it is hard, and it is, it's not, we don't normally in our day-to-day lives, unless you're like a TV presenter, or, you're like Lana and you're on camera every day of the week. If it's not your day-to-day, it is nerve-wracking. But, like, that's the thing about doing these, like, videos that you're using, say, like a small, like, it might be a camera, but most often it's your phone, where you can just capture yourself doing your day to day, typing away at the computer. It's that kind of fly in the wall perspective that I think works really well for it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it is such a different platform from the likes of Instagram, where it is all about curated content there. With TikTok, it's that it has to feel spontaneous, it has to feel organic, because if it's too polished, it almost looks like an ad, and then people will scroll away. So you want your content to feel really true to life and as organic as possible. It really is that kind of off the cuff stuff that works the best.
And what about, like, I'll be honest, I've played around with TikTok. It's not my strongest platform. I'm putting more effort into it, and I'm saying that publicly, so now I have to actually do it. But, LinkedIn for me, I love LinkedIn because I can curate my platform on it. I can decide, what I put out on it. I can make it look nice and pretty. And I think for that, well, less curated, that's where I get nervous. And I think it's where, I'm not, like, totally in control. I have to, be, relaxed. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to be relaxed on camera. And then I'm like, oh God, no. Like, so we get to the overthinking point of it. And that's when people just don't bother then. And then they lose out on the marketing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big challenges I see, especially with bigger brands and bigger companies, they are so used to investing in photography and imagery and branding and videography for their marketing efforts, and trying to get out of that mindset is quite hard, because you feel a loss of control essentially with your brand image when you don't have any of that to kind of fall back on and rely on. So it is a real challenge, and it does take a little bit of getting used to. And that is why I think that smaller businesses that maybe don't have huge marketing experience tend to do a little bit better on TikTok because they're not kind of burdened by the history of the marketing that they've done for their company.
Okay, so you're not, yeah, it's just you're fresh to it, so you learn as you go. So talk to me then about the hook, because you mentioned that earlier on. And, I always say, like, we live in an attention economy. I had to learn not to do the millennial pause, and we can talk about that in a moment. But what is a hook for people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so the hook or the first 3 seconds of your video, it's kind of actually less than that, is the most important part. You have until somebody's thumb hits the bottom of the screen to grab their attention and keep them on your video. So there tends to be three aspects to a hook. You have your verbal hook, which is what you're saying, and then you have your visual hook, which is what you're doing on the screen, and then you maybe have a text hook as well. So some kind of text on the screen that gives context and clarity. Your hook needs to It kind of depends on the point of your video, but ideally it wants to speak directly to the audience's pain points or struggles or something specific that they're going through, and it wants to offer clarity. So, for example, if I was a dentist and I was giving tips on how to brush your teeth properly, within the first couple of seconds of the video, I would say something like, "You're brushing your teeth all wrong. Here are 3 tips from a dentist who's been doing this 20 years on how to do it properly." So you're stopping the scroll, you're giving clarity, you're giving context, and a reason to keep watching.
So when you say I'm going to take my phone out here now to do it for camera. So when you say it's, how long it takes the person's thumb to get to the bottom of the screen, that's when you were scrolling and scrolling on the phone. It's that physical action of I'm scrolling up on TikTok, I have to go back down again. It's those milliseconds that you have to capture people's attention in.
Yes, and it really doesn't matter how good the rest of your video is. If you cannot capture attention within those first 3 seconds, people are gone. They are just immediately out of the room.
So you've got your hook right. You've captured people's attention. What then? I did mention the millennial pause, and if someone hasn't heard it, what exactly is it?
So because us millennials we're not really used to recording ourselves, we have a bit of a pause when we turn on the camera between turning on the camera and speaking. And it is a real marker of somebody over the age of 30. It's something that Gen Z don't do because they're so used to filming everything. So it really kind of it is a bit of a blocker if you are creating content, and it does disturb your hook a little bit because you're wasting time essentially at the start of the video. You need to jump straight in, and a lot of the time, I still have a millennial pause when I create content. I cannot get out of the habit, but I will just edit really ruthlessly so that I am cutting my video exactly when I start talking.
Okay, the video has to start right there and then. You have to grab people's attention straight away. How then do you keep that engagement? What are your top tips?
Yeah, so this is very important because watch time and retention rate on TikTok videos is a really good indicator of a quality video. And videos that have a higher watch time and retention rate will tend to get pushed out further into the algorithm because TikTok's main goal as a platform is to keep people on the app. So you need to sustain attention. So there are various things that you can do. Keeping your videos short is one way to do it. Shorter videos will they'll have a higher completion rate, but also, lots of text on the screen, lots of visual stimulus will keep people really engaged. Making sure your videos follow a structure and follow a format. So doing things in a list. Here are 3 top tips. Here's my 3-step process. That can put people at ease. It lets them know what's going to come and gives them a reason to keep watching. Having promise loops as well. So saying things like, by the end of this video, you'll learn how to do this, which again gives somebody a reason to watch until the end.
Okay, so you have to make that capture people's attention, maybe make a promise, and then complete it rapidly. So, what is a short video? Because I think sometimes, I think maybe the Meta platforms had people trained to do, and as long as it's less than a minute, it's all right. What kind of time frame are we aiming for on TikTok?
So really, when you're starting out, I would aim for short form content because it does take a while to learn and master those retention tactics. So the shorter you can make your videos, like 30 seconds long, is kind of optimum when you're starting out. So if you're a business and you're trying to establish authority within your space, that's one really quick tip or one really quick hack that can make you kind of see as a thought leader in your space. But long form content can work really, really well on TikTok because like I said, it wants to keep people on the app. once you have those retention tactics nailed down and you know you can capture people's attention and keep it, then that does tend to work well. And some of my best performing videos have been like 7, 8 minutes long.
Okay. So it's all about building up that profile for yourself and getting stronger and more confident in how you're presenting yourself as well. You know, if it becomes easier for you to do it, it's going to become more enjoyable to watch it. But there'll be people listening to this and saying, but I've got so much to say. I can't fit it all in 30 seconds.
Yeah, oh, see, I have a real problem with that as well. So all of my content is pretty long form because I cannot keep things concise. If you're that type of person who does have a lot to say, then long form content could potentially work really well for you. But if you're somebody who is kind of nervous and doesn't really know like how to get your point across, then I would keep it quite short.
Okay. Okay. So I suppose this, like we said earlier, it's not about practice makes perfect. It's about practice makes us more comfortable, which makes us more engaging. So really, it's about finding what works for you. Now, I know that the platform, and I'm not one for saying, oh, let's jump on the latest trend, but platforms do change rapidly. What the algorithm is looking for changes rapidly. And I know like TikTok's brought out new community guidelines recently. So, like, how do you keep on top of all of that, particularly if you're a business owner and you're trying to run a business and this is just one aspect of how you're marketing it?
People get really wrapped up in the algorithm changes and thinking, okay, I need to do this because the algorithm likes this. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals of good content stay the same. So you want to create something that is targeted to a specific audience, that gives them real value, and that is aligned with the results that you want to get, whether that is to drive leads, to drive sales, to get more followers, to get more views. Those are the basics of content marketing, and they kind of stay the same. And you just kind of shift and adapt that to what the algorithm wants. So at the moment, TikTok is becoming more of a search engine. It wants to become a really dominant search engine to rival Google and YouTube. So that's something that it is prioritizing. So that means incorporating a lot of SEO into your content as well. But mainly all of the fundamentals stay the same. If you can create really good, valuable content, you will be able to adapt it to those small shifts that the algorithm has.
I know that you speak about this quite a lot and actually quite a lot recently as well. But, you know, some people might feel that their business is too boring to talk about to promote on a video platform like TikTok. What do you think that there are some niche opportunities for people to really grow on TikTok?
Yeah, oh my goodness. So the more niche your content is, the better it will perform. Because TikTok is a search engine, it wants to be able to categorize content and serve it to people based on their interests. So when you have a niche or a really specific business or something that you think is boring or dense with information, it will do better. Like there are accounts that I have worked with that seem so niche but have really taken off. I worked with a cat behavioral specialist, which seems really niche, but
Right.
she has seen massive success in her account and her growth and used TikTok to really generate clients and become like a real thought leader in her industry. I thought that was such a niche that maybe wouldn't take off, but because she has so much information that would be boring to me, like who has no interest in cats, but anybody else who does have that interest, it's so interesting to them. So it really is subjective. The more niche your content is, the better.
Okay, and I think that's really useful information because I think sometimes people think they have to have this massive story to tell, but actually, if you talk about what you're an expert in, you will find a market for it. What then? And I know this is might say a pet peeve of yours. Hashtags. How do we use them on TikTok? Do we even need them on TikTok?
So really, they are not that valuable on TikTok anymore, and they're becoming less valuable on Instagram as well. So TikTok doesn't really use hashtags to categorize a video. So a lot of people think that using hashtags will get you more views. That is not necessarily what they're there for. They're there to help categorize your video, to help signal to the algorithm what it is about, so it can get it in front of the right people. But TikTok uses the content of your video, the visual context, the words coming out of your mouth. They use all of that information before they use hashtags. So if your video is well optimized, if it is clear what you're talking about, if it's clear who your audience is, your hashtags are not necessary at all. And so I run a community of about 2,000 creators, and I'm trying to get them all to stop using hashtags to see if it makes any difference to their content. And for the vast majority of them, they're either saying no difference or it's an improvement on their views. So a lot of the time when you're overusing hashtags, if you're using too many of them, you're confusing the algorithm. They will not know what your video is about. So sometimes using none actually works out better. And I haven't used them for months.
Well, Lana, okay, you haven't used them for months. Well, I see your content. I think it's on a daily basis at this point, and I absolutely love your content on TikTok. So if I would absolutely encourage listeners to go and find you there. What's the best way to find you, Lana, and to find out more about what you do?
So my TikTok handle is at lana.k.social. If you search Lana TikTok coach, I will probably come up. But I then have a link in my bio with all the services that I offer. I have a course and community which helps business owners and also anybody who wants to be a creator. But I also do like strategies for businesses as well, like bespoke strategies. So lots of different services.
And of course, we will share all of Lana's details in the show notes to this episode. Lana, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you very much, Aisling.
Well, I'd like to say a big thank you to Lana for taking the time out to speak with us on Cut Through the Noise today. I hope you found our conversation insightful and helpful. And look, if you're nervous about starting out on TikTok, it's only natural. I mean, we live in a society where we're constantly thinking about whether or not we're being judged. So it's only natural that the idea of putting yourself on camera for the first time or doing it as part of your business, your baby that you've worked on so hard that, it is nerve-wracking, and that's totally fine. And I say this to people all the time, and I'm frequently shocked when I by people's reaction to it. But I've worked in media for 21 years. I went into radio. I studied photography and journalism. The idea of putting myself on camera was the furthest thing from what I ever thought I would be doing. And now, having started very slowly doing videos online and putting my face into them, in 2023, I think I've slowly, this year, really gotten comfortable in front of a camera. So much so that I now do a regular slot on TV here in Ireland. So, it takes a bit of just jumping in and just going for it. And you know what? You're recording it on the privacy of your own mobile device. So if you really hate it, you don't have to publish it, but do try. And if I was to give you my top tip for getting on it when it comes to TikTok, it really is giving it a go. And if you're the person, and I've said this before on the podcast and in other media appearances, if you think TikTok is just for kids doing silly dances, then you're missing a trick. Because it is such a fantastic platform for, as Lana said, niching down and sharing your expertise and the value that you can bring to your market. Whether, as Lana gave the example of her cat behaviorist, or me as a communications coach. So I know I'll take away a lot from today's episode, so I hope you do too. That is it for today's episode of Cut Through the Noise. If you'd like to explore how what we've discussed can work for you and your brand, you can, of course, connect with me on thecommunicationscoach.ie or by email at hello@thecommunications.ie, or go on, give us a follow on TikTok. I'm at The Communications Coach. And yes, all of those links and how to get in contact with Lana are all included in the show notes below. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying tuned to Cut Through the Noise. If today was your first episode and you enjoyed it, there is an entire back catalogue for you to go back out on. And please do give us a comment, give us a rating, review. What did you make of it? What did you find helpful? Or even drop me a line, hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. It is a noisy world, particularly on social media. So we need to communicate with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. So remember, if you want you and your brand to stand out from the sea of sameness, you have to cut through the noise. Stay safe, have a great week, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Cut Through the Noise.